Hello again, welcome to 90s Movies Classics. I'm Tim.
And this is Andrew.
And today, the movie we are talking about is 1999's Lake Placid. This was my choice. I will give a quick rundown of what it was all about and who was involved before we see what we both thought of it. Strangely set in Black Lake, Maine, not in fact named Lake Placid, odd, 4 people attempt to stop a gigantic crocodile who is terrorizing residents. Those 4 people: Kelley, played by Bridget Fonda, who is a paleontologist, I think.
Something like that. One of the paleontologists of dinosaur people, aren't
they? Which I think was the whole oddity of it, that she was called in because they found this ancient tooth.
Right.
And then,
With you.
Bill Pullman, who was, I think, the head of Game and Wildlife.
Fish and Game.
Fish and Game,
Fish and Game, yep.
Brendan Gleeson as the local sheriff, and Oliver Platt as Hector, the eccentric billionaire who is obsessed with crocodiles.
Good 1999 millionaire.
Indeed. And then you got Betty White playing the local, who, spoiler alert, turns out that she was feeding the crocodile all these years. And then a whole bunch of no-names who either get chomped or don't. Does that pretty much summarise the plot?
I think that's a reasonable summary. Yeah.
Yep. Well, we talked on the last pod about how this was its big thing, was that it was written by David E Kelley of the Practice, Picket Fences, Ally McBeal, went on to do Boston Public, and that we were hoping this was going to be a step up on the normal monster movie, as it was written by someone so well versed in the craft. How did you think it played out?
I thought it sucked.
Well,
basically, I will expand and look forward to in some detail. But what were your overall impressions?
I pretty much agreed. We talked about how it was disappointing, and I was hoping that was just a symptom of my high expectations. Unfortunately, it was not. It was objectively not very good, I think.
And I'm concerned about this podcast and our many viewers. Viewers? They're not viewers when they can't see you.
Mm-hmm.
Listeners. You know, trying to get that witty repartee going. I just found this movie boring.
Yeah.
Just found it boring.
Yeah, look, I hear you. I still have plenty to say about it, mostly on the negative column. But look, I do agree that was its fundamental problem, that in a very broad way, it just wasn't very good. And just really for something that really should have been, David E. Kelley just produced a bit of a nothing burger.
And the interesting thing, there's some, it's that whole question, like, who is most responsible for the success of a movie? There's direction, there's writing, there's production, there's acting, and there's more subtle skills behind the scenes. As mentioned in our preview, this hung its hat on the writing.
Yep. And
I had particular problems with the writing. Is this a case of the writing was underwhelming? Is it the case of the direction, which is the role you normally find most responsible for movie success or failure, sucked and the writing couldn't overcome it? I have a couple of theories, but I think it needs to be unpicked.
Yeah, so the director was a guy named Steve Miner.
Never heard of him.
Absolutely nothing to me. He's made a couple of decent movies. He made, especially I was a big fan of horror, well, still am, but was a big fan of horror in the 80s, and he made Friday the 13th Part 2 and 3. He made House, that was pretty good. After that, a lot of TV. He's done some episodes of The Wonder Years, and a whole bunch of David E. Kelley stuff, which is obviously how the connection came about.
Right.
He directed Warlock, which I can't remember, but yeah.
I didn't mind Warlock. I wouldn't say it was a good movie. That was Julian Sands.
Yes, that's the one. Yes,
that we paid homage to in Anaconda.
We did. And look, a few other actual movies. Forever Young, that one with Mel Gibson. My Father the Hero with Gerard Depardieu, I think.
Well, that one doesn't play well these days.
Indeed. And look, after that, a whole lot of TV, but he still seems to be, decent TV. He's got some Dawson's Creek, some Practice.
Fair to say he's never got any personal name association from all this work, so maybe that tells us something. But
indeed, and look, to be fair, I'm not sure he's actually made a movie since Lake Placid, which also possibly tells you something.
Digging deeper now.
Indeed. Alright, well look, to be fair to it, let's start with some positives. Were you able to scrape any positives from Lake Placid?
I will consult my shortlist. Interestingly, we didn't mention the special effects. Stan Winston's name was in there.
Yes.
Of Alien fan, amongst other things. A bunch of things. He's involved in the Marvels as well, isn't he?
He's been around forever. I think I think he was involved in Jurassic Park.
Okay.
I think The Relic. I think probably
the
several.
name in monster special effects.
I'm sure several of the movies we've reviewed to date he's been involved in.
And I thought that until the end, until the final scene, which I thought the special effects were terrible, I thought for that sort of movie pretty good during the movie. I am presuming that they went, David E. Kelley has name, has pulling power, we get stars in, it had a reasonable budget, I assume, and in pure special effects, I thought there was some decent scenes and some reasonably well-filmed action scenes.
Yeah, I was going to agree that I thought the special effects were pretty good. They obviously were a combination, as most were in those days, of CGI and practical effects. Like most of those, it was pretty easy to tell which was which, but there were some moments that were pretty good. I thought the eating of the cow looked pretty good.
Eating of the cow,
yep.
I rated the eating of the cow.
Yep. Yeah, some of the
crocodile versus the bear. I thought that was good.
Yes, in fact that was good. I did also make a note of that one. And look, I thought some of the gore was pretty good. Now, there's something I have to say about that in the negatives, and I'm sure you'll say as well, but I thought the deaths that did occur, I thought were pretty good, and
you just gave a clue, but we'll keep going.
I did, but yeah, I thought they were pretty good, and they were actually a little bit surprisingly gory. I wasn't quite sure which direction they were going to go with that, whether it was going to be more on the PG side, but no, there was some decent gore.
Excellent. That's taken up about 2/3 of my list.
I thought there was some very pretty scenery.
There you go.
Yeah.
Indeed. Yes, I plan to go to Maine in midsummer, but I do plan to go there one day. Shout out to Betty White.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get to some negatives about some of the others, but although she was clearly doing the same thing after about the third time that she appeared in the movie, it was a shot in the arm for the movie that I think that the movie needed. There was a couple of Betty White lines, which the first couple of times you heard them, you were caught by surprise. When you're leaning on Betty White for your star power and for your interest in the acting, that's probably a problem.
Yeah,
they probably leaned a bit hard on Betty's experienced shoulders. But,
look, respect to Betty White. I had her in the negative column, so maybe we'll address that in due course.
I'm trying to find positives, man. I'm trying to find positives.
Look, this one is a little controversial because there's plenty in the negatives column about this. But I thought as a general statement, most of the performances were okay. I thought they did reasonably well with not a lot of material. I thought, and this one may be really controversial, I thought Bridget Fonda was actually quite charming.
That was the one I called out. I thought she did a very good job with what she had.
Yeah.
We will get to what they gave her to do, but I thought she struggled against the source material enough for me to research into Bridget Fonda. Interesting case that, her 90s was surprisingly dominant. Retired in 2002, has not made another movie.
Is that right?
Yep. 2 years after this. And around this same time, Jackie Brown, and several other quite big movies.
Single white female was
a little bit earlier on. From early to mid 90s to basically 2000, just hit after hit, The Assassin.
Oh yeah.
And then just retired completely.
Huh.
And I thought that was a shame that she retired. Different thing about her character, but from a performance perspective, I couldn't judge the performances of our two sort of male leads because they were so drowned in horrendousness around them. Brendan Gleeson's always good.
Yeah.
I thought he was good at what he was asked to do.
Yeah, slightly strangely playing the straight man in this as well.
Yeah.
I assumed, I'm not sure why maybe, but I assumed when I first saw him he was going to be playing the wacky doofus cop, but in fact as the movie went on he was the serious smart cop for the most part, to the extent that any of them were the serious smart cop, which is again a position for the negatives.
And I will say, amongst the much dialogue that will get discussion later, there was a few lines which worked. The sort of, Maine, I'm allergic to timber. And there's one about someone being short after they found him chopped in half by a crocodile.
That was a great line, yeah. I think that requires specific attention, because that was by a distance the funniest line, where they hold up the single toe that's left of him. So is this the man who was killed? And the response, he seemed taller.
Yes, I noted that one as well.
And I quite liked Bridget Fonda's, I keep getting hit with heads.
And just like that, I'm right out of positives.
Yeah.
Any others you'd like to
let me
try and find?
Let me trawl through my lengthy notes to see if I can find any other positives.
17 minutes has passed while Tim is trying to do it.
Yeah, I'm not... I like the title. I thought it was a good title, which makes it even odder that it was not in fact called Lake Placid. The
That
actual
is
lake.
indeed odd.
Yeah, and they make the little comment about it where they go, oh yeah, that would have been a good name. There must have been some sort of weird in joke, because I'm like, sorry guys, you realise it's fiction, right? You can call it Lake Placid if you want to. I found that quite odd, but no, all right. That's all I've got in the positive column. So look, I'll let you let loose on the negatives and see if there's any that left over for me at the end of it.
Where to begin? I mean, I've got to begin with Oliver Platt.
Yeah.
Annoying as fuck. Basically, just despised him. And every scene he was in, from the moment he appeared to the moment he didn't die,
I know.
I just actually found it quite difficult to watch.
Yeah, it was a crime against cinema that he did not get eaten. And look, I can only assume that what they were going for is kind of like the Jeff Goldblum, Dr. Malcolm from Jurassic Park, the kind of slightly chaotic but still charming rogue, and needless to say, did not pull it off. Just an absolute painful, cringeworthy, totally creepy, just blatantly sexually harassing everyone, made even worse by the fact that the one deputy inexplicably falls in love with him, with this offensive character.
I'll get to that later on.
Well, yeah, okay, sorry, I didn't want to jump the gun. So yes, no, completely agree. It was absolutely excruciating.
Concur with all that, and I had that as two components. The him as a character being terrible, and then the gender politics, the attempted gender politics, really uncomfortable, unfunny, and just was stuck between eras or something or other. It was off-putting. It wasn't obviously 80s inappropriate, but it was subtly creepy. Difficult.
And I don't really remember what I thought about it at the time. I certainly don't. Yes, it must have been a bit more acceptable back then, in sort of the same ways as we've talked about with Can't Hardly Wait and so on. But it was. Watching it now, it was painful. And this is not one of these things of political correctness gone mad. It was just flat out. It was just uncomfortable.
And the most obvious thing around the Oliver Platt character, but even the sort of quasi-sexual tension around Bill Pullman and Bridget Fonda just fell flat.
Yep.
The paleontologist, Bridget Fonda tried her best, but she kept getting knocked over and screaming a lot. There was pratfalls all over the place. The character was just super annoying and completely written that way.
Yep.
So, while Bill Pullman, I thought, was just lacking in personality. They just didn't give him anything to do.
No. I love Bill Pullman, and, to the extent anything could be done with the character, maybe he did it, but at the end of the day, the entire character could just be described as decent guy. That's all he did. I think utterly vanilla.
Is this the man from While You Were Sleeping that a generation fell in love with? Is this the man that saved us in Independence Day?
I've got to say, who brought us to tears with one of the greatest speeches of all time in cinema history. This was not the same.
No.
And which, as I think you alluded to, made the love story between him and Bridget Fonda just utterly absurd. The notion that she would fall in love with him or that he would fall in love with her just didn't make the slightest bit of sense.
A lot of the movie was dedicated to the Brendan Gleeson, Oliver Platt kind of back and forth, like hokum country guy against eccentric millionaire, and a bit of the Bridget Fonda New York slick fancy professor versus the backcountry yokums. I just don't care. I don't care. I didn't find it funny. It had one joke in it, and we got about 15 minutes of it spread across different scenes. Just didn't understand.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, you go. I've got some others, but there's some key points.
Generally, it wasn't clever in the sense that the characters just kept on doing the wrong thing and doing dumb things, and then inexplicably won at the end through sheer luck. The final plan to capture the crocodile, and then completely fails, and then just luckily gets caught in a helicopter, and so that's the end of the movie. And I was thinking, I probably overthought this, I suspect, as trying to work out why it was that it didn't work at a time when all his other shows were working so well. And I think it's something to do with the fact that, and obviously I watched a lot more of his shows than you did, and the general sort of theme of these shows was he had these incredibly ultra quirky characters, so quirky that they would have been unbelievably annoying in any other context, but they were all geniuses at what they did. They were all doctors and lawyers who would get over their quirks and get over their eccentricities to save a person's life or get someone out of jail. And so that makes you forgive their quirkiness and think, wow, they can still do these amazing things and save lives, even though they're clearly very troubled individuals.
Yep.
Exactly. And I think that was kind of why this didn't work, because they were that same sort of oddball, quirky sort of characters, but they were also just completely ineffectual at everything they did. And so, they never had that moment of good on you. It was just like, in particular, the Oliver Platt character, who supposedly this expert at crocodiles, just doing the wrong thing at every single step. And then, as you say, not getting eaten.
So we need to talk about that.
Yeah.
Like, just a fundamental error with this sort of movie, that you set up 4 main characters and you kill none of them, especially when we are desperately looking for at least a couple of them to be eaten. And the bodies that we did have were faceless people, so we never cared about any of the people that got eaten. Just a fundamental misstep with this sort of movie.
I suspect the reason flows from another misstep, which is this moment where, I don't know if this jarred the same way for you as it did for me, when they got to the end and they were going to call in, or they'd already called in the extra people, and they say, oh, no, we can't kill it, we have to trap it. And that caught me completely by surprise. I was going, what do you mean? It's been killing people, just kill the thing. Why would you put human lives at risk to try to capture this crocodile? And I suspect the whole thing was, they thought, if we just have it slaughtering hundreds of people, that won't work so well, and so we maybe almost need to make it a little bit forgivable. That's my theory, because otherwise I cannot think of a single reason why. The unforgivable, as you say, clearly at least 2 of the 4 main characters should have been eaten.
Yeah.
But there was at least 10 or 15 other faceless characters in that final scene when they're all trying to shoot the crocodile and tranquilize it. They all lived. What was that about? You could have so many easy deaths, and there was 3? 4? 3, yep. Yeah, I know, completely unforgivable, and that's my theory as to why, but it's a reason, not an excuse.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I had the same point. The whole concept of saving the poor crocodile after it's eaten 3 people, and we're going to save it by sacrificing a cow.
Yep.
Well, the 90s that long ago, that society almost feels like it goes the other way these days, where we sacrifice the animal because it's been sighted within 100 kilometres of humanity, so we must kill it proactively. In this situation, I think the crocodile's dying, and we're going to kill another animal to save this animal.
Yeah.
Just absurd.
Agreed, and clearly put the humans in incredible risk. Literally risk many lives in order to save the crocodile. And
it's big, okay? It's big, and it's in an unusual location, but anyway.
And you compare it to, I guess, something like Jurassic Park, where you go, well, sure, the dinosaurs weren't evil, so you didn't have people killing the dinosaurs, but you also didn't have people putting their lives at stake in order to not kill them. The humans come first, right?
I also had, similar to what you said, I said sort of shoddy investigation, in that their whole investigation of investigating, trying to find how they're going to trap was just stupid from start to finish across all characters, whether it was the traditional police officer, the apparent fish and game expert, the paleontologist, or the millionaire crocodile dude. None of them had anything helpful to add, and they certainly did not work together as a team, bringing something bigger than the sum of their parts. But anyway.
Agreed.
To minor technical point, the music, super cheesy, and I didn't add anything, and the audio, and I just watched it on a streaming service, I don't think that was the problem.
So did I.
Music and audio over the top of their talking. So it was one of these movies where too much background noise, you're reaching to turn it down, yet struggling a little bit to hear the dialogue. Especially when they're trying to, I think, do witty repartee between characters, and in addition to the unfortunate fact that it wasn't funny or witty, it was actually quite hard to follow, I thought. So I found it a frustrating technical movie as well.
Interesting. I listened with very good noise-cancelling headphones, and I didn't really have that problem. But yeah, interesting. Okay.
What else have you got there? I've got a couple more.
Just generally, I thought the final scene was
crap.
Yeah, underwhelming. To the point where my streaming service was still sort of saying it was, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes to go, and I assumed that was the pre-finale finale. You know, I assumed something else was going to happen that was actually a decent finale, and then I'm like, oh wait, that's it. That's it. He just gets caught in the helicopter, and that's the end of the movie. And and as it turns out, the 10 minutes I assume was credits.
I do have to point out as well, the second crocodile.
Yeah.
Just a cliche. You know, cliches can be fun, but like anaconda, second snake, fun. Second crocodile, which just seemed to be a normal-sized crocodile.
Yeah, and just gets wiped out instantly. Like within seconds of seeing it. It wasn't even like another action scene. It was just, no, here's the second one, boom, it's dead.
So that they could say the line about we're back to one or something like that. And overall, I'd just say it just wasn't funny.
Yeah. Agreed.
And I don't think being funny makes up for some of the other problems, but it's it's in the positive column if you find yourself laughing.
Yeah.
I cracked a smile a couple of times. We said a couple of lines. For a broadly comedic film, it certainly wasn't a drama. It was a light action. It was trying to be a comedy, as far as I can tell. Just wasn't funny.
Yeah. Oh, and in fact, that brings me back to the Betty White situation, which it's not Betty White's fault, but I thought her character was quite painful, and it seemed to fall into the category, which, to be fair, was a bit more of a 90s thing, but an old person swearing is funny. Yeah,
look, I thought it was funny the first time.
Okay.
The first time.
I may have found it funny in the 90s. I did not find it funny now. I thought that was a bit painful.
I watched a lot of Golden Girls, so real soft spot for Betty White. So she's got it going on.
Yeah, but look, I think the reality is we are left. We were hoping this would be the perfect merger between brilliant script writing and B-grade horror, but it just really didn't happen. I don't know if that means they are doomed to never mix.
But we've seen it. I mean, we've seen Anaconda already.
Anaconda, true.
We will continue to pursue this lofty goal.
Indeed.
But I only have one other point of note. Mm-hmm. It touches on what you said earlier about everyone being faceless, and it touches on what you said earlier about the deputy inexplicably falling for Oliver Platt.
Yes.
That particularly hurt me, because that deputy is not faceless. That deputy is Meredith Salinger, who I've had a long soft spot for, from the Corey Haim, Corey Feldman Dream a Little Dream double from the late 80s. And she plays exactly the same character in Bugbuster, a far superior schlock horror movie. Always had a lot of time for Meredith Salinger, and she appears in this movie and is marginalised to a pinprick instantaneously.
Yeah.
Like, they could have at least given her a good death.
Yeah.
Like, none of the above. So that particularly hurt.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough.
So, how does it stand up, in your opinion? And, would this movie be made today?
Well, it certainly doesn't stand up well, in the sense that it was bad to begin with, and
that's a problem.
And to some extent, and look, I haven't gone back and rewatched this, but I have a feeling that the style generally of David E. Kelley in the 90s probably hasn't stood up that well either. And look, I might turn out to be wrong about that, but I suspect that might be a bit of a thing. The answer is not well, but I mean, could it be made today? I mean, clearly the people are continuing to make crocodile movies and alligator movies, and they will continue to make them into the future because they're a really good baddie and a creepy, scary monster. And so,
didn't change my opinion. The crocodiles are scary as hell.
Exactly.
Anyway,
So yes, no, I mean that particular movie was a fail, but could it be made today a lot better? Of course. Yep,
I would agree. And in theory, getting a good writer and high-profile actors on a schlock horror movie should work.
Yep.
Just didn't seem to.
Yeah, what's the David Mamet's doing? Aaron Sorkin, get them into the crocodile movie. That'd be amazing.
I like it. Would you watch it again?
No. I suppose I can envision it could be one of these movies that I'd turn on and watch a couple of the death scenes every now and then, but fundamentally, no, I can't see myself putting myself through the entire 90 minutes or so. You?
Believe it or not, I think it was 82 minutes. Ooh. It even felt long, but it was that long.
It did.
Probably exactly the same. I would never seek that out if I turned on the television. I don't think I'd even bother to load it on a streaming service. I guess if it was on late night TV and I happened to turn on TV, 2 or 3 minutes at the outside. Yeah. But basically, no. I suspect Lake Placid will never cross my life again.
No. Lake Placid 3, on the other hand.
Look, it's coming up later on, obviously. We need to restore our faith in Lake Placid 3. But, I intend to watch it again just to wipe away the memories of the inferior original.
That's a fair call. All right. Nothing else to say about Lake Placid?
I don't believe so.
All right, let's never speak of it again.
Outstanding.
What's our next movie?
Well, it is with some excitement that I report that next movie will be 1998's Deep Rising.
Oh, yes.
So I felt a strong need that we needed to immediately go back to the monster movie well, lest, the Lake Placid experience, sorry, I had to speak about it one more time, poisonous against the great genre. So went back to a more of an underground late 90s monster classic.
Genius. Yep.
What are your memories of Deep Rising before I fill in on a few facts?
Set in the middle of the ocean somewhere in a large boat, a giant tentacle-style beast. Because I wouldn't have that much of a memory of it, but do you recall when we went and saw Deep Blue Sea at the cinema?
I do recall this.
And they had some 90s previews. And one of the previews was Deep Rising.
That's very subtle memory.
And so yeah, only the preview, but it's a little bit fresher in my mind than it would have been otherwise. And I remembered it being masterpiece is possibly too strong. But I remember it being pretty cool at the time. So I am excited. So I remember it being good. I remember tentacles. I remember the ocean. Okay. Reasonable summation. Those things are all true based on my memory as well. Is the main actor? I'm going to take a huge guess and say Treat Williams.
You are spot on.
Yes.
Which is a quite left field selection. They sadly died in 2023.
Did he really?
Yes. So he's no longer with us. And I'll give you a shocking fact. So Treat was at the time of the movie was work out late 40s or something or other like that. So he actually lived a reasonable existence. You may or may not remember his female co-star next to him, who's gone on to be a bit more famous.
No.
The great Famke Janssen.
Ah.
Who turned 60 the other day.
Oh, man.
We are feeling old. So this was, I think, the first time we ran into it. Would have been neck and neck with Rounders.
Yeah.
Around, in fact, I think Rounders was 97 or 99. Very similar era.
Rounders
was
97.
So it was after GoldenEye, though. So she was just starting to rise. Several other interesting people in there. An actor by the name of Anthony Heald, who you won't know the name, but if you're a Silence of the Lambs fan, he's the psychiatrist.
Oh, okay.
Who is a particularly odious character. Kevin J. O'Connor, who you will recognise from The Mummy.
Oh, okay.
And that is, of course, the calling card of Deep Rising, is it was the movie before The Mummy of the director Stephen Sommers.
Oh, right.
Who Deep Rising presumably gave him the credit that they handed him the huge budget of The Mummy. Interesting thing, quick look at IMDb, as well as it getting 6.1, which is not that great. $45 million budget, $11 million takings in the US, which would indicate massive flop.
You would think, yeah.
But A, I remember it being quite good, not Oscar winning, but like good at what it was. And B, they handed him the reins to an enormous movie with enormous stars, which went on to be one of the hits of 1999 or something or other. So they saw something that the public didn't see, so quite curious about that. Just a couple of other nominal things. Digimon Hunsu is in there, just pre-Gladiator, post-Armistead. Wes Studi, one of my favourite bad dudes of all time from Last of the Mohicans, is in there.
I have not seen it.
Oh my god.
I know, sorry.
This is the sound of me leaving at this point in time. And Jason Fleming was one of the Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels dude whose career was not quite as successful as the but nonetheless. Interestingly though, the Stephen Sommers, The Mummy, obviously great news. Other than that, the Mummy sequels, Van Helsing, which was almost unwatchable, and the G.I. Joe movies, which, despite The Rock's valiant effort to save one of them, basically vanished without a trace.
Yeah, right.
So I'm wondering whether there's a bit more in the negative column than the positive. The only other thing I'll mention is that I do remember this concept. You talked about it as a tentacled creature.
Yeah.
They cleverly, it's almost two monsters in one.
Okay.
Because most of the movie is about these tentacles.
Yeah.
And then the creature only appears late in the movie.
Okay.
So I remember feeling like it was a bonus issue, to quote our economics teacher.
This was the
two monsters for the price of one.
And done, no doubt, better than Lake Placid.
Yes, I have watched it quite a few times. I really liked it, the kind of one that I put on at the video store in the background, despite being not rating appropriate, but haven't sat and watched it in I don't know, 10, 15 years, so that the subtle details will not be in my mind.
Yeah, I don't remember. I think I saw it at the movies, and then I probably watched it a couple of times on video after that. But yeah, I certainly haven't watched it for decades. It's not a movie that you hear much about. You don't see it sort of turning up on TV or anything. So
most of the people's careers went down rather than up after this time, which I'm nervous about. Also, I specifically remember there is an Aussie stereotype character, which is new level of cringe.
Oh no!
So hang on for that one.
Okay. All right. Well, no, I'm excited. This is a good choice.
All right. Until next time.
Bring it on.